Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be reviewing the Bryton Rider 15 Neo GPS bike computer. Bryton is well known for the high performance and high value bike GPS computers. They have everything from touchscreen computers to more simple computers like this Rider 15. What we have here is the most affordable option in the Bryton lineup. This is the updated Rider 15 Neo, which has improved Bluetooth, improved display, and a higher contrast screen. As you can see, packaging wise, it's really simple. You just have the head unit itself in the box, a little graphic showing the computer, some basic instructions and copyright on the sides. So I'll go ahead and take it out of the box and we'll go over the specs. So retail price on this is $70. It's one of their most affordable models. It's a 2-inch HTN LCD segmented display. It has 21 functions. And it has a 16-hour battery life with a micro USB rechargeable battery. It also has Bluetooth connectivity to connect to the Bryton Active app, as well as connect to Bluetooth sensors like a heart rate monitor, cadence, and speed. It also has smart notifications, which is really cool at this price point, which lets you see if you have calls, mail, or any notifications from your connected cell phone. In terms of what comes in the box, you get the head unit itself, which is the GPS. You get a simple O-ring mount with the Bryton specific mount design and a couple different length O-rings to accommodate different handlebars. You get a micro USB charging cable to charge the device. And then you also get the instruction manual, which tells you how to use it, as well as some of the warranty information. Now let's take a look at the weight of the computer. So just the head unit by itself, that comes in at 48 grams. And the mount, the handlebar mount with two of the O-rings with the larger padding, that comes out to 10 grams, so really quite light. So before we jump on the computer to set this up, I want to show you some of the basic interfaces of the computer. You can see a really simple design. You have a fairly thick bezel on top and bottom, the Bryton logo. No logo on the front face of the computer though, because it is smaller. On the bottom you have the Bryton mount, which is a little bit thicker than a normal Garmin quarter style mount, as well as the micro USB charging port here. So it's pretty well protected, and this is an IP7 rating, so definitely can handle wet weather riding. You have one button on the back, this orange button, and that's your power button, as well as entering and exiting the menu. And then you have two bottom buttons. The bottom left is to cycle through pages or hold it to turn on the backlight. And then you have an OK button or start and stop a recording. So the front two are really easy to access, while the bottom back is a little bit harder to reach and something you don't need to do when you're actually riding, just to turn it on and off initially. So now let's set up the Bryton 15 Neo. As with other Bryton computers, it's really easy to get up and running really quickly. So you press the rear button once to turn it on, and then you're ready to go. So it'll get your speed, altitude, temperature, everything from the GPS automatically. If you want to connect sensors, you can do that. You can only do heart rate, cadence, and speed though. You can't do a power meter. That's only one downside of this computer. So configuration is also really simple. Despite the simple display, they've done a really good job with labeling. So you can see the rear button is to do the menu. You can set two bike profiles. That's really rare to see on lower cost computers. You can calibrate the altitude. It picks it up automatically the first time you turn it on, but if that's incorrect, you can go ahead and input it. You can sync any other sensors like the heart rate, cadence, or speed. So I'm going to press OK with the bottom right. I have a cadence sensor, so CA. And then I'll wake it up by spinning the bike. So you can see it picked it up, press OK. You can also delete any previous ride history on here. Set the unit, so we'll do that, press OK on there. Cycle through with the bottom left. You can do miles per hour, kilometers. And you can also change the temperature from Fahrenheit to Celsius. You can change the clock configuration. You can also input odometer, which is really nice. So if you're coming from a different computer, you can keep track of your total mileage. And you can do a factory reset. So press the bottom button again. Now the bottom button isn't accessible, but you don't really need it when you're riding. So when you're riding, you can simply cycle through the available pages they're automatically set up based on what sensors you have. You can show up to 4 pieces of data: distance, cadence, speed, or heart rate if you have that. You can show the maximum, the average. You can show distance, time, speed. You can show ride time, speed, as well as, again, the 4 configuration with the gradient in the middle. Now, if you have notifications set up, they'll show up here in the middle. It's a very compact screen at 2 inches, so it is a little bit cluttered, but you have all the data you need: temperature, heading, battery status. Turning on the backlight is simply holding the rear button, and you can see that icon turns on, and it's really nicely evenly lit as well. So really easy to set up, and once you're ready to go, you can go. You can also set it up with the Bryton app by reconfiguring the screen, and I'll show that next. Now let's take a look at the Bryton Active app. What's really nice about Bryton is they don't take away software features, even for the low-end models like the Rider 15. So you can connect to the Bryton app using the Bluetooth connection. And with the app, you get basically 4 tabs. The first tab shows your activities, so you can look at your previous rides. It's a basic interface. I'll show you the map, statistics, charts. It's not as nice as Strava or Garmin though. So if you really want to look at more down level, lower level details, I would recommend using those apps. Otherwise, you can add courses or workouts. That's not applicable with the Rider 15, but with the Rider 720 or higher models, you can set up maps or interval training. You can set up your profile. And one of the best things is you can connect to the Bryton and set up some features. So one thing you do is you can set up the grid, and this is a really cool feature to see on a low-end GPS computers. Typically, it's kind of preset and you have some basic options, but here you can do, as you can see, up to 5 pages. You can set how many things are visible. It is fairly limited though, obviously because of the segmented screen. There's only so much you can put here. For example, at the top, the only option you get is speed. For the middle thing, you can actually do altitude, average, max. And at the bottom, you can set distance, odometer, time, altitude. So it's pretty nice. Given the features you have, you can rearrange it as desired. And you can also set the different pages. So up to 5 pages, not as many pages as the other Bryton computers, but it's more than enough to customize it. You can also go back and set the notifications so you can actually see when you get emails or calls. You can do the altitude calibration. So if you want to adjust it based on where you're at. And you can also change the language and see the about. You can also do the firmware updates here once they're available. It's a really nice feature, and it's nice to have this connectivity on such a low-end model. Here you can see the Bryton Rider mounted on our bike. Even though it has a small 2-inch display, it still has really good contrast and readability even in the full sun. It's also easy to navigate, so that little bottom left button, as you can see, will rotate through the different screen options. And we like the fact that you can customize it with the Bryton app. Overall, the GPS is really easy to use. Being a budget price computer, there are no alerts, so it's a silent computer. You just have to remember to start your ride and not to accidentally stop it by pressing that bottom right button. That's one of the biggest gripes. We've often found ourselves accidentally hitting that button and stopping the ride. Otherwise, GPS quality seems really nice. Everywhere we rode, we had good reception and it connects pretty quickly. The data upgrade rates are a little bit slow, especially when you jump on a sprint, but otherwise they're really consistent and accurate, so you can see distance, time, all the important things. You just can't see the power rating. But otherwise, for normal riding, it works out really well. Now let's compare the Rider 15 Neo with some other GPS computers on the market. Let's start out with some of the more affordable ones we've reviewed. Here's the Bontrager Elite RIDEtime, similar 2-inch screen. It's a lot more compact because it's a non-GPS design with an actual watch battery instead of USB rechargeable. That combined with the proprietary mount design means it's very small. It's non-GPS though, and it's the same $70 price, so less of a value than the Bryton. The only advantage with the Bontrager is that you do get automatic connection with the Bontrager lights, which lets them automatically turn on and off, and also turn off the night mode. So that's one nice option. You get the integration, but you do lose the GPS. The screen designs are very similar. You have a segmented design where everything's on a predefined grid. The other advantage of the Bontrager is that you can actually connect your power meter. It is ANT Plus connectable, whereas the Bryton Rider 15 is only Bluetooth option. Otherwise, really similar. The Bontrager is a lot harder to use because it's a 1-button design with a secondary confirmation button on the rear. where the Bryton has much more flexibility with a 3-button design. You can also see that the screen is nicer on the Bryton, especially with the backlight on, and it's more customizable, especially using the Bryton app. The other budget computer we've reviewed is the $50 Cycplus. Now right off the bat, this is a big computer. It's almost 2.9 inches, so comparing these two, the Cycplus has the big advantage on size. The big disadvantage with Cycplus, it's a very cheap computer, so the backlight's uneven. You can actually see the edges on there compared to the more advanced Bryton. The Cycplus also does connect with a power meter, which is something the Bryton does not, so that's one other advantage of the Cycplus. However, the overall design of the Cycplus is a lot more lower end, so the screen, you can really only cycle through available options. You can see if you don't have sensors connected, so heart rate, cadence, and power would go here. If you don't have them connected, then you just lose area. Whereas with the Bryton, you get the automatic redistribution of what's visible. So it makes much better use of the smaller screen, but obviously the Cycplus is easier to read with a larger display and more segmented design, whereas the Bryton can get a little cluttered, especially with a 2-inch screen. Also, the Cycplus is a Garmin mount versus the Bryton style mount. So both pretty easy to find mounts for, but the Garmin one is easier. I wish Bryton had gone with the Garmin, as they're very similar, but you can see very slightly different. The Bryton is a little bit thicker. Now, comparing to Bryton, you may be wondering which one should you buy. And Bryton, as I mentioned, comes up with a big range of product lines. We have everything from their touchscreen model, the 750. So this is our highest end unit with navigation, voice commands. You can actually connect your cell phone, power meter, all the sensors you'd ever need. Being a touchscreen, it's a lot easier to use too. You can simply swipe, drag up and down. So a lot more functionality, but this is almost over $200 versus the $70 Rider 15. So it definitely depends on what you're looking for. If you want the color touchscreen versus a more simple computer. The more accurate comparison here would be the Rider 15 versus the Rider 320. 320 is about double the price, but you get the power meter connection, a larger screen, and you can see a much more customizable display. This actually uses a non-segmented screen, so whereas the Rider 15 is limited to certain areas, you can see you actually get full menus here, a lot easier to use, but obviously you pay for the difference. Design-wise, very simple, very similar. You can see almost identical. The Rider 15 is just simply a smaller design of the same screen. Now let's go over the pros and cons for the Bryton Rider 15 Neo. What we like about it is the affordable price. At $70, it's really a bargain for a GPS computer. It's also nice that you can customize the display by the Bryton app. That's also something you don't see at this price point. And finally, the 3-button interface is pretty easy to use, so you can actually go through the menus without having to run through the manual to understand how to do that. Some of the negatives for the computer is the fact that the 2-inch screen is a little bit cluttered, especially when you have 4 items on there, so you really have to focus to see which item is which. It's also really easy to accidentally cancel an active recording since it's the same button and it's just a quick press, so we often found ourselves having to re-record a ride as we'd accidentally stopped it. And finally, some of the icons are a little bit difficult to understand, like the AM/PM indicator, and that's just because of the limited style of the display. Taking everything into account, we'd give the computer a 9.0 out of 10. It's a really impressive budget price GPS computer with some nice features. Thanks for watching this review. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can see more content from us on our website at thesweetcyclist.com, as well as follow us on Instagram at thesweetcyclist. This is Sweet Cyclist reminding you to enjoy the ride.